Hello and welcome back to my channel, Bookish Lady Night, where we get a look behind the book. Today I'm joined by the lovely Berlin Wick. She is the author of the Balance of Power series, which book 1 is called The Secrets We Hide, and book 2 is The Promises We Break. I just read that one and it was phenomenal, so definitely check those out. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Of course. I loved this book. Like all the banter and then the plot, like it just was perfect. It was the perfect balance of everything you want in a romance novel, and it was great. So I haven't read book 1, but I'm going back now to read it because I saw peaks of the characters from book 1 and I want more. So definitely
Yes.
going to go read that one for sure.
Yeah, there's a pretty intense scene in book 2 with the book 1 characters.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I need to know these people. I need their story. So I was like, I'm having to go back. I have to go back. So when you were writing this story, how did it come about, and like picking the location and having that whole like world come alive?
So I live in the Bay Area, and originally I was like, oh, I'll write kind of what I'm familiar with, but it didn't kind of feel right for the characters. And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest area. And so when I was writing it felt more natural. Like I didn't have, when I wrote the first book, I didn't have this whole plotting thing really nailed down. And so there was a lot that just kind of came about as I was writing, but I always kind of felt like I wanted to have the setting in Seattle. And so that's kind of where that started. With book 2, we have I pull out a side character from book 1, and then that's, our main character in book 2. And it felt so natural to have that transition for his character to be a transplant to Seattle as well. So that's kind of how that intertwined, and I was able to kind of cross over with the characters between the books. Even though the first book is standalone completely, second book is standalone completely, but it's, there's definitely little sprinkles of the characters in both, so you get to know them a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So is this going to be each of the friends have their own book?
Yeah, so book 1 is the MFM Secrets We Hide with Christian, Jake, and Elena, and then book 2 is with Hudson and Amber, and as you know, in the end of book 2, I did a little kind of teaser with the second epilogue with Seamus, and so he's coming in book 3. So it's going to be a second chance romance. And I won't say the book title yet or any of the release date information, but that's coming soon too. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's exciting. It's different for my style of writing because it's a past present timeline. So it's a dual timeline. And that's definitely a little bit more challenging to write, to perfect it.
Yeah.
And try to make it feel flow. Yeah. So it's definitely, taking a little bit more energy and time to make sure I feel like it flows well. And so this one's taking me a little bit longer to kind of piece together, but I love how it's turning out. I just feel frustrated with with the timing, because I'm like, I want to finish this, but I know it's not, it doesn't feel right, and I have to kind of go back and forth and touch on the past and then touch back on the present. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit more of a challenge with the past present timeline.
You set it up. I'm not giving any spoilers away, but that was epic how you set it up, and then the ending, and I was like, this is gonna be so good. So definitely read book 2 if you want little insight into what book 3 is going to be like. So it was great. So when you plan out a story, I know you said the first one you kind of maybe was more like a planter. Is that probably right?
Yes, totally. When I first started writing my first book, I really wanted to write, and so I just kind of started writing, and I had no idea what I was doing. And so I wrote actually, let me start over. So I actually started writing the first chapter, and it was like, I'm just going to write this short story. It's just going to be this hot little smutty short story, and I'll just do a little blog or something. That was my idea originally. And then when I was writing it, it kind of evolved into more, and then it felt kind of just right to kind of continue writing the story. And then I was halfway through, and I realized I had no idea what I was doing. And so I stopped writing the book, and I actually took a few online writing courses, and just kind of to get an idea of character development and plotting. And, and then I realized I am not a plotter. I am more of a pantser, in that regard. I do plot out the main premise of everything, and have an idea of what's happening, but then I want it to feel natural. So I kind of just let it flow. And so I guess I'm a plantster,
Plantser, yeah,
plantster.
planter or
Yeah.
something, a little bit of both.
Yeah. And it did help to like kind of take a few, writing courses on like, just the character arcs and that and kind of understanding the storyline and how to kind of develop that over the course of the story. And so after that, I felt just so much more comfortable, and then the rest of the book just kind of flowed out. So that's how it kind of started. And then there's a little sprinkle in of Hudson in at the end of Secrets, which is kind of the little teaser and leading up to his book, just like it is with Seamus in book 2. So
Yeah,
yeah,
story was like the beginning with how they meet. It's like a total meet cute, and then you're like, oh, she's not there anymore. And you totally set it up. It was great. I love the whole beginning of that book. I was like, this is so well done. I love
thank you.
that whole like trope. Like it was so good.
Well, and it's fun. I felt so connected to their story, like in the beginning, because I loved their meet cute, and I loved how they met. And like I think we all have like a little dream of meeting some hot man on a plane, like
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah. So it was so fun to write, and then of course the strip club and how that all worked out. I
Yeah.
had so much fun writing that part, and I was so obsessed with their story from the beginning.
And her nickname, I love her nickname. That was so cute. Like it was just perfect. And then at the end, how you circled back with that whole thing, I was like, oh, I love it. So it was great. It was very well done.
Thank you.
So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I did little book boxes for some of my ARC readers and some of the street team people that I have, and I sent out a copy of the book, and then I did some character art, but I also included packs of Big Red, and it was really cute because it made everything smell like cinnamon. So it was fun. It was really fun to like put those together.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think that was so great. It was so creative, especially because it had a little bit of where they started and then where they ended, because it was the same thing that like brought them together, and how she used that same, I don't want to give anything away, but the same thing,
Yeah.
she pulled it back around to the front at the end. So
Yeah.
I loved that. Exactly. Yeah, that whole ending, I was like, please tell me she's not gonna be mean and like break my heart after I read this whole entire book. And I really thought that for a few minutes. And I was like, no. And then the waterworks, and then
Yeah.
this was great. Like that whole thing was just perfect.
Yeah. No,
So
they had
have
to
you?
come. They had
Yeah,
to come back together.
exactly. They had to come back together. So how have you celebrated milestones?
What's that?
How have you celebrated your milestones?
You know, so my Secrets came out in April and Promises came out in September. And it's funny because I think I'm kind of hard on myself in the sense that like, the books are doing great like on Kindle and there's a lot of activity just like within the Booksta community and book talk and such. And I feel so fortunate because I feel like I've talked to some other authors and they're like, oh, I didn't get any like pages read this week or whatever and stuff. And I know it can be um, so daunting. You almost feel like it's not that it's not worth writing, but you just kind of want like a little bit of validation when you're, putting your heart and soul in these books. And I feel so fortunate because I am at about like 950,000 pages read on Kindle since April 25th when the first book came out, which I feel like is just a huge milestone. Almost a million pages read in the first, 9 months. And so I'm gonna do something big. I think I don't know what we'll do
Yeah,
to
do something.
celebrate, but I got to do something because I think yeah, like I know that's a big deal and it's so exciting and again I just feel like so fortunate that like people have responded well to the book and I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, what if somebody gives it a 1 star and like, oh, and yeah, so there's always that nerve-wracking kind of process, but yeah, I feel like my husband will probably do something really big because he's making a big deal out of the million thing, and so I think that's going to be a big milestone when we hit that. So yeah.
That's really, really great. So this is a fun question. So when you're writing,
Okay.
what is your favorite beverage and snack?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I work full time during the day, and so I usually wake up between 3 and 4 in the morning, and I write for a few hours, 2 to 3 hours before I just get ready for my day. And that's usually because I'm usually like, I'm a morning person. So I usually am more awake in the morning, more aware. I'm a morning person. So it's always coffee. And I'm obsessed with coffee. I actually can drink coffee all day. It's bad, really bad. So usually if I'm writing, I'm drinking coffee or I'm drinking sparkling water because I have an obsession with SodaStream, and that's also a really bad obsession. So it's either or, and I always light a candle and kind of just create like a little ambience that I love, and that's kind of it. And that's kind of where Wick came from because obviously it's my pen name. So Wick came from the whole candle loving situation, and yeah, so it's always coffee and candlelight.
Oh, I like that. That's a great ambiance to have while you're creating, especially
Yeah.
with being a romance author. It definitely sets the mood and the tone for your writing for sure. Let me scroll down here. So, do you have a moment that you can recall in this process where and it could be many moments, but like where you felt really proud during this time in your journey?
Let me see here. When I felt really proud, I think I my like natural personality is like constantly striving for more, I think, and so it's always hard to like I always have a hard time um recognizing like the milestones or recognizing the moments that I should be proud. Um, and I do remember like when the first book was released, there was a lot of activity and a lot of I think because the tropes were a little unique, and so I think I did feel really proud that I looked on Goodreads one day, and there was an author friend of mine that I met through one of the writing workshops that I did. And she goes, "Oh my God, you have like, 200 people that have categorized it in the want to read category." I'm like, "Where do you even see that? I didn't even know where to look on Goodreads." And so that I just kind of felt really proud because I didn't even know like that was there, and that the book hadn't even been released yet. And it was in the want to read category. So it was exciting to find out, I was like, "Oh, wow, that's so cool. There's 200 people that
Awesome.
want to read the book." So I remember feeling like just kind of giddy about it.
Great. Yeah, I always wonder actually because I always when I find a book like on Bookstagram, I'm always like I jump over to Goodreads and I like flag it so I don't forget it because I'm like
Hmm.
Dory and my brain will like I'll lose it really fast, and so I always go over there and do it. But I didn't know if it notified an author. I was always wondering that because I'm like, does it tell them like that we're like gonna read like this book, and so that they have that like momentum and knowledge. So that's really cool that they do that.
Yeah, no, I love Goodreads because it's interesting because it's like so hard to get reviews and ratings. It's interesting because like if I were to look at, and I'm sure there's other authors out there that feel this way, or maybe you've heard it from other authors that you've talked to, but like if I look at my Kindle Unlimited, my KDP account, I could see like, oh, today, there were 9,000 pages read or something, and 9,000, like would equal out to like, 28 people reading the book in a day pretty much, but like I got one review, and so, or one rating review or whatever. But for some reason, Goodreads actually gets more of a response for ratings instead of Amazon. And so I just found that interesting. Like, I don't know why that is, but I love it because Goodreads is such
Yeah.
a great resource, to not only for your TBR, but also just to like get, good feedback on reviews from readers who are avid readers.
Library thing.
Library thing.
Yes. So it is an app where you can catalog like a library, and it like catalogs by like the author, the title of the book, ISBN number, like everything. Like you can like if I have a hard copy book, I can go over it with my phone and scan the barcode, and it brings the
Hmm.
book up into the app. And so I have most of my books in there because I have a huge like physical book collection, and then I have a ton on there. So my reviews are mostly I post on Goodreads, and I do have it to like know how much I read and just like have that. But I always also do it in that app because then if I go buy books, like because I'm really notorious for going to a bookstore and I'll buy a book and then they'll do like a new cover, and then I'm like, oh, I bought it twice now. I have this book twice in my collection. But I'm really bad about that. Like I said, I have a little bit of a Dory brain sometimes, so it's
It's funny. I'm not a huge collector of physical books, but if I love a book, I have to collect like every single version of it, like special edition, like it doesn't matter. And so I do find that like I do that with like books that I absolutely love, and I get like I hoard them.
yes. I am
Like I
very
get
much
obsessed with them.
a book
Yeah.
dragon because
Yeah.
I just want them all and I want to keep them all and I want to look at them all day and all the pretty covers and the bindings and all the character art.
You have to send me a picture of your library. It's probably on your Instagram. I'll have to look.
Yeah, I definitely will.
You probably have one of those big ones with the ladder and it's
I
all.
wish I did. My house is not conducive to that. When we're planning on moving in a couple years, that definitely will be what I have. But right now, I have these bins that I bought off Amazon. They like are the kind that like pop up and you can like fold them down when you're ready to not use them. So I have
Mhm.
those and I stacked them all along the landing of our upstairs, and they go all the way up to the ceiling, and they hold all my
Yeah.
books. But yeah, it's a big obsession. I'm
It's
sure
a
you can
problem.
relate.
It could be worse. It could be drugs.
Exactly. I had a shirt that I posted a few weeks ago that I got, and it says, I rescue books from bookstores. I'm not a hoarder, I'm a hero. And I'm like, that is totally me.
I love
So,
that.
yeah, exactly. So if you know, you get it. So with writing, do you have anything that's kind of like your writing kryptonite?
You have really good questions. You
Thank
have
you.
really good questions. No, I don't. I don't know how to answer that.
So there's nothing that like can derail you when you're in the middle of writing social media or distractions or anything that trips you up ever.
I try to, yeah, I mean, like I try to like put my phone away and not pay attention to my phone at all when I'm writing. And I write so early in the morning typically. I think it's just my own mental like status of what's going on. I'm kind of obsessive about like the details. And so I think my kryptonite is that I have to go back and reread certain chapters instead of just writing. Like it's probably like one of the things that someone told me is just write because your first draft will change so dramatically from the last, and so which I need to learn to do better. Like I need to just write and write and write and write and then go back and fix everything. But I get like obsessive over the details, and I'm like, wait, did they say this or did they say that? And so then I have to go back and search like the chapter and then like double check what I wrote and then go, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So then, and then try to kind of play off of that. And so I think that's probably a downfall for me, like when I'm writing, because I get so caught up
And
in
then
this
it
little
slows you
tiny
down.
detail. Yeah. That like probably my editor would catch later,
Yeah.
or something silly. So it's like, I really need to I would probably write more books if I didn't have that, like, I don't know, AD equality where I have to go back and look and then double check and go back and, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of
Yeah. Have you ever had writer's block during the process? Does that like kind of incite writer's block ever?
I haven't experienced that yet, but I haven't been writing that long. And I have talked to some authors that have talked about it, and it terrifies me. Like, I don't want to, like, I probably have 7 or 8 different, like, plot lines of different books I want to write. I started writing a reverse harem firefighter Christmas story, and I was hoping to get it done by this Christmas. And then I realized, like, quickly, I wasn't, not that I had writer's block on it. Like, I had the whole plot line set up. It was going to be a novella. It was pretty quick and easy. But it was right when I finished Hudson's story, and I was so ready to write Seamus's story. And I wasn't like committed to these other characters I started writing. And again, like, I just wanted to write this other story because, I wanted to be able to release a Christmas novella this year, but I realized I wasn't feeling it. And I was like, I just need to like follow my gut and just stop and go to Seamus's story and just start with that. And so that's what I did. And it felt better. Like I knew that that was the right thing for me to do because I was feeling that, but I haven't experienced like, so other than experiencing that, I haven't experienced like writer's block. I just wasn't feeling that book necessarily at the time.
Like a mood writer, kind of a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. Which goes with my mood reader mentality because like I can't read anything I'm not in the mood for at all. Like if I'm very much a picky reader when it comes to what I read.
I just have to say on a side note, I love all your characters' names. They're so great. I love them. Like all
Thanks.
Seamus and like Ember, like I love all those names. They're so great. So
Thank
great
you.
characters for sure. So you're a newer writer, so this is probably not so much in the past, but if you could go back in time to when you started and talk to your younger writing self, is there anything that you would tell yourself knowing what you know now after publishing 2 books?
I feel like I'm like too young to give my future self advice in that sense, but like it was probably, let's see, how old is my oldest son? So it's probably like 20 years ago. I took a writing course when I was working full time because I really wanted to write. And actually, what happened was I originally moved to California for college and I wanted to go to film school. And like film school was like my passion. I wanted to direct and produce and screenplay write and do all these things because that was like where I really wanted to, aim my focus. And that didn't end up working out for me just because of life and other things that happened. But it was always kind of there in the background in my head. And so if I were to tell my if I wish I would have started writing then. Like I wish I would have just made that work in my life at the time in that sense. But I think that would be the only like, you know what I mean? Like advice I'd want to give. Yeah. Like, yeah, I wish I would have started writing earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. So, so you didn't end up doing that. What did you end up doing for your career?
So I work in title and escrow. So I'm a corporate,
I did that for a while. I was a loan processor for a while in a
oh,
galaxy far, far away. I did that a long time.
so you're familiar with the craziness that comes with that kind
Yeah.
of demands. Yeah.
Yes. Very.
So yeah, so I work in escrow. I work for a great company. It's my day job, and writing's more of a passion, a recent passion. But yeah, I started kind of there, and I worked my way up in the company, and I'm still at the same company I started. So yeah, that's kind of the route I took because that ended up obviously providing at the time, and then other things happen in life and I stopped going to, I ended up dropping out of college, which don't do that. It's a terrible idea. But, I mean, especially if like, you don't necessarily need college in certain aspects, but like, if you really want to do a specific, trait, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do that. But either way, yeah, I've liked how it's all worked out and it's come full circle in the sense that now I'm doing it and I'm happy and I'm finding that passion.
And I just watched on Instagram. I follow this artist. He's like almost 50, and his last child just moved out. So he's like, I have nothing to do with myself. Like I have no one to help at night. Like I'm done. So he started picking up drawing, and he used to do it in college. And then life happened, and he stopped.
Hmm.
And he's only been doing it for like under a year, I think, but it is incredible. And he's like, I have not done this since college. And like, he just is doing it every night. He's drawing, drawing, drawing. And it looks like that thing is sitting right in front of you, and it does not look like a drawing. And I'm just like, that is so awesome. So it really doesn't matter what age you are.
Yeah.
As long as like you're passionate about it, as long as it brings you joy, like do it. Definitely
Yeah.
do it. So I'm totally with you on that for sure.
Yeah. That's cool. You have to send me his info. I'll check him out.
I will. I was like, oh, this guy is so awesome. I love that. So, what is the most difficult thing for you about writing?
I think it's finding the time. Since I'm not a full-time writer, that's definitely the most difficult thing. And I think it just goes with like anything in life, like whatever you want to prioritize in the sense that like if you, want to, lose weight or if you want to, have a new hobby, like it's kind of just that is like, it's like finding the time because I force myself to wake up early in the mornings or, dedicate that time. So that's probably the most difficult thing because I want to do it all the time, but I can't. And then I think it's also like everything else that comes with writing that I think like that people don't realize. Like when I started writing a book, I was like, oh, I want to write a book. And you're like, okay, yeah, simple. I want to write a book. And then you realize like I have to format the book for both paperback and for ebook. And then like I have to figure out how to get it edited and then I have to, after it's edited, then I have to go through again and then I have to get proofreaders and so there's all these other like factors that come in and then you have to market the hell out of it. And and there's so many like factors I think that people either don't realize or that kind of entail so much more work than just the writing.
I feel like indie authors, you have to be like a Jack or Jill of all trades. Like this
Yeah,
hat
you do
today,
all
this
the
hat
things.
tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, and like when the first book for Secrets, I had someone do the formatting for me, and it was really difficult because every single time there was one small edit in the book, like, one little proofreading area there was error that needed to be updated, or, one little tweak, like I had to go back to her and be like, oh, okay, can you send me a new formatted version? So then and it's like, so that was like something I quickly realized, like, I need to learn how to format because I don't want to keep going back to somebody to ask them to fix it and then send it back to me. So then I just kind of took time to learn. I format on Vellum and love that program. I absolutely love it because I'm on a Mac and that works out well. But yeah, so I think that's the kind of more difficult thing with writing is like it's as an independent author, you do all the things and you just kind of have to figure it out, and it's not always that easy.
Yeah. So on the flip side, what's your favorite thing about writing?
My favorite thing about writing, I love creating stories. I think it's like the only area that I'm really creative because I'm really terrible in any other creative area, at least in my opinion. And, creating the characters, I mean, just the whole creation part of it is really, really fun. And then like the feedback that you get, when there's a story or there's a quote or there's something that you said that helped somebody, like I never want to lose touch to be available to like readers who reach out. I always want to be there and be able to be relatable and people to be able to reach out and say what they want to say. And so that's been really special, I think. Rita reached out and she was like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, like she had her relationship changed dramatically after she read my book." I didn't expect that, and it was so flattering, and I think that's probably been the most rewarding part of it all, is just being able to like hear from people where they just say, "Oh my gosh, this quote just touched me," and it's like, "Oh my gosh," like and I see people like get tattoos of like their people's quotes or like images.
I don't know if
Yeah,
you see it, but I have a whole fantasy sleeve
oh
all the
my
way up my
God,
arm
that's
with
so
quotes.
amazing. It's so
So
amazing. Like I am telling you, whatever author that's from, like
several, but yes,
yeah, like lifetime flattered forever, like so something like that is so touching, that it's that impactful, just words. And I think that it means a lot. It means a lot. I think that's my favorite part.
be making you feel like you're on cloud nine because like some of your quotes like totally hit me in this book. I'll tell you after the interview a little bit more about that, but and I feel like especially nowadays we're more becoming more open and honest and like not so like where you're gonna be. I mean, there still is that, but there's a lot more acceptance and you're not so scrutinized for your feelings and your needs and your wants and all that stuff. Like it's a more of an open dialogue rather than like some shameful thing you keep inside and don't tell anybody about. So I feel like a lot of authors that are writing books like you do and putting that information out there, especially for women, I feel like,
Hmm.
because I'm sure you know this, but a lot of the time it's like it's okay for the man to do it, but if the woman does it, it's like a whole other slew of like what's wrong with you and all of this stuff where it shouldn't be like that. And so I like how your characters are very, he's very supportive and like let's do this, and she's like I'm going to do this and nobody's going to tell me different. And I like that because so often in everyday life it is not like that. And so it just needs to be brought up more and like remove that stigma of that. And the more that authors write about it and the more that people read about it and talk about it, the quicker that will happen. And so yeah, I think that was my I loved Ember in this book. She was
Well,
badass.
because she's young, but she's strong, and she's and
Resilient.
she's determined, yeah,
Yeah.
and resilient, and I feel like there's a lot of women that are constantly put down that affect their confidence levels, and it can be from any situation, like in childhood. Maybe it's their sister, sibling, or their parents, or an ex-boyfriend or something. And it's so easy to put somebody down and have that be a core memory that affects them for life, and to be able to write about someone that kind of battles that constantly, and is able to shift their mindset and become stronger and grow into a stronger individual. Like I always want to write kind of, not necessarily strong dominant females, but empowered females that are willing to not only be submissive and kind and nice and smart all the time, but also assertive. And I think that's important because we don't want to be aggressive. We don't want to come off as, because if we're aggressive, we're a bitch, right? I'm sorry. Can I say that
No,
on
you're
YouTube?
fine.
Can I
You're
say that?
fine. Yeah, you can because I always mark these as not for kids so that it never gets in a kid's hands. So
No, it's good. They're not for kids.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
because
totally do. No, it literally is. If you
automatically.
stand up to
Yeah.
somebody or if you talk with any kind of authority or confidence, you're you're
Right.
like you're like you're put down like for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like, oh, I don't want to deal with her. She's a total bitch. And you're like,
yeah,
no, she just is standing up for herself, and that's okay. And so I think, I think being able to maybe to write, and that's what, the Balance of Power series, it's like, it's not just, it's and initially kind of the idea was the balance of power between these relationships, between the male and the female, and how much power a male can hold over a woman and vice versa. But also just kind of that balance within our own individual selves. So I think it is powerful to be able to kind of read a character and relate to them, or find something about them that you want to grow into, or it helps somebody grow into.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. I totally agree with that. And I love that you are putting that out there. So, for you, what is the most difficult thing with writing in the opposite sex point of view? Was that a struggle?
You know, um, I actually thought that would be a big struggle when I first started writing, and I don't know that I do it all that well or anything, but like I feel like because maybe I'm a little bit more of a masculine personality, like I'm not super girly or anything. And like I don't, I feel like, I work in a female dominated industry, in the sense that a lot of my peers are females, but a lot of my non-peers are males, and kind of have to match that energy a little bit. And so I found it almost a little easier to write the male point of view than the female point of view for me. And I also think because my males are not total, they're like alphas a little bit, but they're also very
Not alpha
similarly.
holes. That's
Yes,
for sure.
yes, they're
There's
not
not the
alpha
N
holes,
word on
exactly.
there.
Yeah. Like I wanted Seamus to be an alcohol, and I can't. I like he's not. He's just not coming out that way, and so I just don't know if I have that in me.
He
I hope I do.
so from my point of view with him, like he comes across like really like military person. So he has that like dominant like, but then like I don't know, in my mind I'm just picturing this big tall buff like teddy bear. Like
Yes,
I don't know.
yes,
It just
he
that's
is
how
a
he came
teddy
in.
bear. Yeah,
Yes.
so he's very stoic and very like serious and very controlled in every situation, but then the moment anytime, and I'll just, how should I say it? So our female main character's name is Mimi. So that's her name. And whenever Mimi is involved in any situation, he's totally like losing his mind. So it's the only time he's like not controlled. So I do feel like he's kind of more stoic and assertive, like around his friends and stuff, but around, our female main
Girl, he's like
character,
the total because that's what I
sucker.
picture.
He's a
Like I'm like,
sucker.
yeah, he's like this big buff guy, and then he's like when she comes in the room, I'm like, he's totally that way. I could just see it, especially like the little bits we see of him. I'm like, he's totally gonna be gone for whoever his girl is. Like he's gonna be gone. So
Yep.
it'll be very good to see that. So, what is the hardest type of scene for you to write?
Oh gosh, the hardest type of scene to write. Honestly, I feel like there are some sex scenes that I wrote that were really difficult to write because I feel very picky about verbiage, and I've read some books where, not that I get like icked out or anything, but it's like the usage of words, or like
Yeah, it's
just the
just
way things
cringy.
are explained. Yeah, like I'd never want it to feel cringy, but you can't constantly use the same words. So I feel like sex scenes are kind of harder to perfect when you're trying to make them sexy and hot and all of that, but still make them, um I don't know, they're difficult. They're difficult to write.
So, on the flip side, what's your most favorite type of scene to write?
Probably the sex scenes. Can I say both? Wow.
There's
Yeah.
different aspects. Like you're saying more of the verbiage or the words. So the other side is, I guess like the emotions and like the
Yes,
feeling.
like the intensity behind it. So like that's my favorite part to like finagle with, is like the intensity behind it and like the feeling behind it. But then the sex scene with the words, like that's the hardest part, is just not being cringy, or not using the same words over, or not, because that can totally throw somebody off. Like, a reader can be like, "Ooh," they can be totally in it, and all of a sudden they read one sentence and you're like, "Oh." So so yeah, I do feel like it's like that's the funnest thing to write, but it's also like the most difficult to like perfect.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, who inspired you on your writing journey? Has anybody like really stuck with you that, you kind of used to fuel you, push you forward?
You mean like in my personal life to encourage me to write, or an author? Okay, so So when I first started reading, like I've always been a big reader, but then I kind of discovered smut a few years ago and I was like, oh, this is really fun. And my first smut book was T.L. Swan's Stopover. And I became obsessed with her. And I read the Miles High Club series and I loved it. And I fell in love with her men, even though her men are like the ultimately most frustrating men of all time. Like, sometimes they just do stupid shit and you're like, God, stop doing
Shake
stupid
'em.
stuff. Like, yeah, but like you have to love them. And so that was like my first discovery into like, smut. And then I read Marnie Mann and her Dalton series book originally. And hers was definitely more like sexy. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to like the sex scenes and stuff. And just fell in love with her stories and her men. And I was able to meet her at Love in Vegas one year. And she's so fun and so adorable. And I just loved her. She made me feel so welcome. And I remember feeling like I can't wait. I had just started writing The Secrets We Hide when I went to Love in Vegas, and I remember going like, "Oh gosh, I can't wait to be an author that people, want to talk to and that help affect people's lives, And so I just remember like how she made me feel when I met her, and I just like want to kind of emulate that a little bit. So I think those two authors really kind of helped me, in the beginning.
Well, that's really great. I always love to meet authors. Like, they're like celebrities to me. So I'm
Hmm.
always like
Well,
fangirling it
I
really
was like
hard.
totally fangirling. I was like, oh my God. I like had my shirt made. I was like, had all the characters' names on them.
If you're guys, who is your, like, I know this is like asking who your favorite child is, but like, are one of them your favorite like book boyfriend, or are they kind of all?
Man, I just love Hudson. I don't know what it was about his character when I started writing him, but I found it interesting because, with Jake and Christian, which are in The Secrets, their characters weren't really developed early on. Like I again I had an idea and I had this, story I wanted to write, but I didn't really thoroughly like plot these characters and do any character development. I only did that after the fact, and so I don't feel like I like connected with them as much as I did when I plotted out Hudson's story, and I had all these traits already built in, like okay, this is who he is, and this is how he is, and these are the things that he likes, and these are the things that he doesn't like, and so like I already had his like these traits kind of built in before I even started writing him, which made him so much easier to write, I think, and so Hudson and Ember's story, like I wrote really quickly, like
Mm.
considering um, that I haven't been writing very long, and I feel like after the story was over, I was like sad that I didn't have them anymore, and I almost had like a book hangover after, and and I was so anxious to get into Seamus's story, but I still had this like underlying like book hangover from Hudson. So I feel like Hudson's probably my favorite character that I wrote. I just love
Yeah,
his demeanor and his
I like him a lot. He's a very good book
yeah.
boyfriend for sure. So, out of your characters, is there one that's most like you and that you have like that affinity to?
So both Elena and Ember are very career driven and very determined, and I've always been that way, like in my career. And so I feel like there's a little bit of me in both of them, and they've kind of both they're both very similar in that regard. And so I feel like with Ember, I related to her probably more. I don't know. I related to both of them a lot. Like there's definitely traits in both of them that kind of emulated from me and who I am. And so I can definitely say both of the female main characters in both books, like I relate to them immensely in different ways. Yeah.
So, what are your favorite tropes and or favorite tropes to write?
Oh man. Okay. So I love okay, so my favorite tropes. I love reverse harem books. I love any variation of reverse harem books. And I actually love mafia books, but I don't know that if I could ever write mafia books because I don't know that I can write and do justice to the male main character and how like hardcore they have to be, I guess,
Yeah, very unhinged.
very unhinged. And I don't know that I would do that justice. So like I would love to one day, like maybe when I'm more seasoned, but that's probably one of my favorite tropes to read is like the mafia billionaire kind of, alpha hole. I love the billionaire trope. Let's see what else. I would say like the marriage of convenience kind of fake dating, the thing that I wrote it within Promises was probably my favorite to write so far. The second chance romance I'm writing right now has been my least favorite because it's so challenging, I think, to get right. And I think I'm questioning every chapter that I'm writing, especially because it's the past present timeline. But yeah, so I think that's definitely been the more challenging one. I'm trying to think of what other tropes that I really, really like. I love triangles, but they break my heart most of the time, so I can't do it. Like I have to be in a very specific mood to read love triangles. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. So with writing that book, because you were saying like it's struggling, have you done like research like by reading similar like ideas of books to kind of just see how other authors are doing it? Or are you just totally working from, this is what I think I want to do and this is where I want it to go and just trying to like fill it in between the two with that back?
You know, it's funny that you asked that because I ended up watching like an interview with Stephen King, and he said in one of his interviews, he said, if you want to write a book, read a lot. And I thought that was kind of very powerful because we, as humans, we just learn from what we observe and what we read. And I think it's probably the most powerful learning tool that we have. And so I read, so like this year, I have to look at my story graph. That's how I track all my books is through Storygraph and Goodreads. But I love Storygraph. I think I'm at like 84 books this year. So I'm like trying to get to 100 books by the end of the year. Um, just because, it's 100
Well,
bucks,
too,
right?
so I'm totally
You have a goal, right?
it's like fun. It's like, did I get it?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm like, oh, I gotta hit all those novellas this month. But but I do feel like that's probably like where authors can learn the most in regards to like different styles. Like I learned different styles of writing that I wouldn't have learned otherwise if I didn't read it. And again, like it's being able to learn from it when you read it, not necessarily copy it, but just kind of take pieces of what, these people are doing because these other authors, because that is how we learn. But I did meet an author. I met JT Geisinger, and she was like, oh, I don't read any books because I don't want it to tamper with my ideas of my other books. And I was so impressed by that because her books are fabulous. She's like the biggest, I don't know, have you ever read any of her books?
But I did not know that she didn't read at all, like while she was writing. That
Yeah, and like so when I do read, like I have not been reading any second chance romance or anything that's like tropey within the tropes that I'm writing right now because I don't want it to like I don't want that I don't want to like not
seep in.
necessarily plagiarize, but I don't want it to seep in. Yeah, I want it, but like before I knew I was writing a second chance romance, I'm like, I need to get a couple of second chance romances. Like I need to read a couple. And so like I read Love in Other Words. I read Pamela O'Rourke's Broken Strings, and just a few that I knew that had that trope to get a few ideas of how other people are doing it, and I think just a great tool. Reading is a great tool to learn and understand and just get ideas from. But yeah, I don't typically read the same tropes that I'm writing at the same time.
I've heard that from other authors. They'll read like
Hmm.
sci-fi romance when they're writing a contemporary romance, or they'll read something
Hmm.
adjacent to what they're writing, slightly different, so it's still within the realm of it, but they aren't having it affect them while they're
Hmm.
writing. So
Right. Yeah.
I totally get that. So when you're writing, do you when you have a moment that's like a plot twist or like a big like whoa moment, does it come to you ahead of time, or is it kind of like the characters are like leading you?
So with Seamus' story, it's very plotted out, and so I have this whole plan. And so far, I haven't like deviated in any other direction. Like I've stuck to my plot. Hudson's story and Promises, that plot changed like 3 times. And I think because like I was writing it and it just kind of felt like it was going like a different direction. And I was worried about that because I was worried that like the readers would feel like it didn't flow, but it also felt very natural. And so like I feel like I don't know, for me at least as a writer, when I have an idea of where I want the story to go, and I think that's where like the whole pantser thing comes in, where it's like okay, I know I'm not going to stick 100% to the plot that I have in my head because naturally different conversations happen between different characters and things happen that kind of evolve the story. And you have to kind of go with that flow. And so I like that it happens naturally most often, with certain characters. Like I remember I was talking to another author, a friend of mine, and she she told me that her male main character, or actually, I'm sorry, let me start over. I posted on my story, somebody asked me like, "Oh, what's your ick?" And I go, "Oh gosh, like anything food related with sex and spitting in the mouth." Like that's like when I read it, I go, "Oh God," And I made that comment, and so Maddie messaged me, and she was like, "Oh my God, I just sent you the arc for my next book, and he spits in her mouth."
You're like,
And I go, okay, that's fine. I'll totally read it still. It's not a problem. but,
yeah, yeah,
um, but she goes, but it just felt so right. Like for the character, like as she was writing, it's like she didn't intend that to happen for him, that to be part of like his kink or whatever. But when I read it, it did flow. Like it flowed with her character. Like it made sense that that was something that he did. So it didn't, although I don't like that necessarily, it didn't like feel wrong, in his character. So I think that's how like things flow and things happen.
yeah, yeah, definitely. You have to have,
Yeah. Like it needs to feel right. Yeah. Yeah. So I know a lot of writers like do sprint writing where they try to do like 20 minutes and just get as many words as they can. I tried that and that's a lot of pressure. But what I was doing like with Hudson's Story, I was tracking my words per day. And I realized it gave me a ton of anxiety. And I was like, oh man, I'm feeling really like, because I was so hard on myself, like, oh, I only got 400 words in this morning and I wrote for 2 hours and it just like nothing came out right. And I was deleting and going back. And so I think that like the writing sprints are good to like train you to like, for someone like me who goes back and reads and then stops and then overanalyzes or overthinks things. So those are really good. But what I started doing for Seamus's book was I started tracking my words per week. And I avoid looking at my word count per day because like I was being too hard on myself and it was actually tripping me up even more, and I was writing less because I was just being so hard on myself. I think it's like kind of the same thing as like when you're trying to lose weight and you weigh yourself every day, you get discouraged.
yeah,
And so I stopped doing the word count per day. And in the last month, I've just been doing every week. I look at what I write for the week. And that's been making me feel a lot more like successful because I go at the end of the week, I'm like, oh, I wrote 6,000 words this week, and some days like I can write 6,000 words in a day if I just write for like 9 or 10 hours in a day, and that's really amazing. That's like the best feeling ever. But yeah, so I do feel like I just do better with a weekly check.
exactly. So with this writing process for you, how long has it been taking you to finish from like starting to get the point where you like are publishing it?
You mean like when the book is done to publishing? Or
Yeah, like when you started, like is it a couple months or is it taking you a longer time from getting to where you're writing the whole thing out, getting through that whole process to when we get it?
well, so Seamus's book has definitely taken me a lot longer to even like I'm at about 60,000 words now, and so I'm thinking this book will be about 100,000 words. And so I'm about 60% in. It's definitely taken me longer to write this book because I started writing it in August and I feel like I should be done by now. Like I initially was going to have it to my editor by December 15th and I told her that's not happening. So we're changing that timeline. But once she gets it, which I'm hoping actually will be like January 15th, is what my goal is. I want to be able to release it by March 5th. That was my initial goal. But by the time she gets the editing portion done and then I get it back and I do a proofread and then you have, that process done and then I have to format it. I would say like, to be able to really be successful with like the marketing piece and content and formatting, you should at least have 3 months from the time you have it completely edited, at least that first edit, because that way you can start drawing like content from it. And so I would say I want to have 3 months from the time that the first edit is done. But I know some people don't do that. Like I know some people are like, oh, I'm going to send it to my editor and it's going to be released in 28 days. And I'm like, ooh, like that's crazy.
There's another author that I interviewed and she was like rapid releasing and she has like 5 or 6 books that came out last year and I'm just like, oh my golly. And then I spoke to another author and it was a duo. They were writing duo and this last year they've published like 14 books.
That's that's crazy. Like that's a book a month, like more than a book a month. Like that's wild to me. Yeah, no, I'm so impressed by it. I wish, like, I guess that, like, because not only, like, do you write the book, but, like, you write it and then again, then you have to edit it, and then you have to go back
Yeah,
and
to
proofread
get
it, and
through
then you
everything.
fine tune, and then you do content. So it's like I can't focus on writing another book if I'm trying to, like, do Canva content and all the other stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's really challenging. So
Yeah, I
that's
know.
really, really impressive. Yeah.
Props to you. Like I like you already released two, and I'm just like, how did she do that?
No,
Like,
like,
because the
show me
first
your
one was in
secrets.
April, right? April for the
What's that?
first one. Your first book
Yeah.
released in April, and then this one came out in September, right? Yeah, September.
Yeah, yes,
Yes.
September.
I'm like, that's really fast in my mind. I'm like, wow. So
Well, keep in mind that, like, my first book, I wrote it, and then I was like, okay, I wrote a book, and then I was like, what do I do now? And so, um, I actually had finished it, and then I had to find an editor. So it went to the editor in January, and then I had to figure out the whole, like, marketing piece of everything. So, I finished that book December, January of 2024, and then it was released April 25th of 2024. So that one took like almost 5 months to release from the time I had finished it. Whereas I finished writing Promises on July 8th, but I started writing Promises like way early on because I didn't know about all this other stuff that I needed to learn in between. And so I finished writing Promises on July 8th. It went to my editor. She had it for about 2 weeks. And then I got it back, and then we did proofreading, and I released it on September 5th. So from the time I finished it, it was 2 months. Um, but I definitely felt like that was very, like, I did feel a little overwhelmed during that time. I feel like 3 months is a better
your sweet spot's like 3 months to get through what you
ready.
need to get through and feel confident.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So, did you enjoy the process of making the covers for the
Oh,
book?
they're so fun. Yes.
They are so fun.
So I just started messing around on Canva with book cover making, and I know, like, there's so many different platforms. There's like Adobe, not photo, I guess Photoshop, or I don't know. There's so many other platforms you can do book cover making. But
Mhm.
I mean, I have a book cover, person. But yeah, it's fun because you get to, pick your model, and and your design, and your look, and and I just absolutely fell in love with the secrets behind a cover because it was just so sexy and alluring.
So sexy. And even Hudson's cover, I love his cover. Like his is.
Yeah, it's fun to, like, pick the models, and and then kind of put it all together. And Seamus's book is going to be the same look, the same theme with the lettering and font the same, but his color, will be based on our characters,
Yeah,
colors and stuff. So
yeah, it's gonna be good. I'm excited for that one for
mhm.
sure. So in your opinion, what makes a great story?
Oh gosh. I think it's just I think it's important for me, at least as a reader. I need to just be very connected to the characters. And if there's too much, like, external stuff going on, like, I think it's great when, authors describe a scene and they're putting you in the moment, of what they're feeling, what they're hearing, what they're smelling, like being able to describe a scene, but not going so much into detail that it takes away from the story. And when I recently read a book, and it was just one of those books, like, I had a really hard time getting through because I felt like, there was a lot of these other side characters that she was, like, kind of telling their story. And I think her intention was to, like, line it up for the other books in the series, maybe. But it was just too much. There was too many names. There's too many. So I think if there's too much going on, and you're bringing in too many outside external happenings,
Yeah,
it takes away from the story. And, like, when you're reading a romance, you want to read more about the characters than anything else. And so I think that's important. But if you're reading, like, a fantasy book, then it's totally different because you're world building, like massive world building. And I love fantasies. I don't know if I'll ever have the capacity to write a fantasy. I hope I do one day because I'm so impressed by, like, the creativity. Gosh, I'm jealous of their creativity. But yeah, so I think, again, I think it's like the mindset of what you're reading, and the expectation of what you're getting, and to stay within that realm.
yeah, totally get that for sure. So, what is the most surprising thing you've learned on your journey as a writer?
A surprising thing, I think how rewarding it ended up being. I thought it would be like, I thought I would give up really fast at, like, the first bad review, but most people are very kind. And again, like one person giving you a compliment or sharing how it helped them is just, man, it's so cool. And so I definitely think that was surprising for me. Like I thought, I would kind of shut down the moment I got any bad reviews. And even then it's like, okay, it's just not your cup of tea. Like now I'm like, okay, it's just not your cup of tea. That's cool. And so I think that helped like my own personal confidence in understanding like it's okay. It's okay not to like my book. Um, and that makes me feel pretty good that I've been able to kind of that confidence in myself has grown.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that, like, it just wasn't right for them, but you have like all these other people that like love it, and it spoke to them. So it just didn't speak to them, or they'll come back to it later. Like I have one friend, she's very much a mood reader. She'll start a book, and then if she doesn't like vibe with it, she doesn't necessarily DNF it. She like puts it aside, and then the next year or the next few months she'll like bring it back out and then read it when her mindset has changed, because
Hmm.
then it might be the right time for her to read that book. So
Yeah.
I haven't had,
Yeah.
I usually know like kind of what I like to read. So I haven't had much of that experience where I read a book and I'm like, oh, I can't read this book anymore. I usually like devour most all of the books that I read because I just love them. I love how we can be readers, live all these various different lives. So, but I always wonder, like, it's just maybe not the right time for that reader to read that book rather than there's anything
Hmm.
wrong. So I usually, when I go read reviews, I take them with a grain of salt because I'm like, it's probably just
Yeah.
not your jam. So
Well, and I love that people leave reviews because they're so important for authors, especially on Kindle or on Amazon because of where they place you in like the rankings, and then they do for your reading or because you liked this book, you might like this book. Like it helps the authors like be placed in front of
being
other readers. So I love that people leave reviews, but then like when I go to a book, I want to read the blurb and see if it like resonates with me, especially their writing style, the tropes, based on what the blurb says. And the reviews, it's like, I mean, I could see a book that's rated like a 3-star book and I'm like, I love this book. This book is great.
yeah,
So you just don't know.
yeah, and it's so interesting, like going on the reviews. Like I meet a lot of ARC readers on different, because I'm on several ARC teams of authors that I've read some of their books and I love this book. Like I want to support you. I want to like push you out there. Like it's. And some of them are like, I never give a 5-star review. I'm like, why the heck not? Like if you love the book, why would you do nothing but a 5-star? They're like, I always do 3, sometimes 4. And I'm like, this like some like I'm not aware of, because
I
I'm
know.
generally like 5-star. If I love your book, if I connected with your characters, if it got me out of my mind and my like own daily life and I enjoyed it, it's getting 5 stars.
So I feel the same way. I give out 5-star reviews like Halloween candy. Like it's just like, here you go. Because honestly, like for me, a book is to take me away into a place where I just want to and if I entertained me and it did its purpose, like that's 5 stars to me. If I felt emotionally connected, if I did all the things, like if I cried, laughed, felt
Mhm.
mad, like if I did all that, then it's like a super star review.
Plus.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I definitely feel like, I round up. I definitely round up. But yeah, I had a couple readers like, they wrote the review and they were like, "Oh my God, this book, like, da, 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 like it's so good, so great, blah, blah, blah." And it's like they're screaming, on the review, and it had 3 stars. And I was like,
I don't understand that.
what happened? Like, is 3 stars, like maybe in their head 3 stars is really, really good. Like, I want to know what your 5-star reviews are like, because that's impressive, I guess.
Yeah,
And so yeah, it's always funny because I just people have their own rating system.
exactly. Yeah, it's always definitely. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah, contradicting.
when you're writing your characters, do you draw any thing from like the people of your past, people around you, or are they just totally kind of come into your head and they're like, hey, we're here?
I would say more so just kind of developing them in my head. Then, I think there's some traits that people have that I know that are kind of sprinkled in there, but more so just kind of creating them and having these traits based on their character. And then as I write them, they kind of develop into their own, person. Yeah.
So what is your favorite part about being a writer?
I think I'm always about learning and growing. And so I think, with with the first book, I learned a ton the first time I published. There was mistakes made and things I did that I was like, oh, I didn't realize I had to do this. There's, you know what I mean? So I think the challenge of doing like all the things, like someone asked me like, oh, would you consider doing traditional publishing, or would you want to just continue being an independent author? And I would be totally open to traditional. I wouldn't want to do that full time, to have the demands of like, oh, you have to have this book done by this date, and we have to have this, and we're going to do all of this. Like, to have, because I'm kind of a control freak in the sense that I kind of want to have control over that timeline and control over the book cover or control over what certain things do. And I think I discovered as a writer that I do like to do all the things, like formatting and having the input on the book cover and having the input on, what the design looks like, what the content looks like, what the marketing strategy is going to be. Like, to me, it's like a full blown, business in that sense. And I like the challenge. And I didn't expect to like that, because I wasn't even expecting, once I wrote the book, like I was like, oh yeah, I wrote a book. So that's been really fun.
Yeah, that's great. So do you do a lot of like educational learning? I know you mentioned you did some in between or right before you started writing the first book. Have you kept that going?
I still do a couple of different like courses online, whether live. I do one. It's a romance club with about 30 different authors that do a live class every Monday evening, and that's been fun because there's just like there's just one topic, that two of the teachers talk about, and then all the people, it's a Zoom class, and we all kind of just banter back and forth about ideas and certain things. So that's been really fun. So that's just something that's continuous. And then I do tend to dabble into some of the master classes and listen to some of the authors and writers that have those classes as well. And then in San Francisco, there's the writing salon that offer different classes, and so I'll keep an eye out on their website to see if there's any upcoming classes that they offer that I want to do, like if it's plotting or character development or fiction writing or how to do a mystery kind of style, so that I can kind of pull from that into the romance world. Yeah.
So what is a book that you loved as a child? Do you recall a book that was like your favorite when you were growing up?
I remember reading Huckleberry Finn and I loved it. I'm not sure why. I just remember loving reading it. And when I was a little bit older, because I'm not as young as some of these other youngins, I dove into Harry Potter, and I am a Harry Potter geek. I love Harry Potter. That was 20 years ago, and that was what initially made me want to take that writing course, when I was, attempting to work full time and do multiple other things, and, life happened. And I remember she was very inspirational, and like she wrote a children's book, and that's amazing. So I am Harry Potter. I'm Potterhead.
Me too. I remember when the last book came out, I was working and I was on my lunch break and I had the book, right? And I was reading it and I was like, go, 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 go. Like, I was
That's
like, I'm
true.
so
Yeah.
into this book. And then there was like this much left at the back. I'm like, wait, slow down. Because I'm like, this
Yeah.
is the last one. So I totally am a Harry Potter fan.
I had my son, my oldest, he's 19 now. And I remember I was feeding him on the couch, and I had him in a little boppy pillow, and I was feeding him, and I was reading book 6. And, in book 6, we lose a very important man
Yes.
in our life.
Yes.
And I threw that book across the room. And then I was so mad because I couldn't get up
To get it.
to get it. I was so mad. So yes, I will never forget the feeling that diving into Hogwarts and Potter world. Like, that's, a sensation that I think I loved. Like, and even my oldest, it was cute because when he finally got into Harry Potter, we did a thing where he read the first book, and after he finished reading the book, we watched the movie. And then he read the second book and we watched the movie. And then when he finished reading the last book, we watched the last movie. And like, I'm so glad he had that experience, because not a lot of kids can say that. And I surprised him that Friday, and we flew out to Universal Harry Potter Land
So
and
awesome.
Harry Potter World. Yeah. And it was just such a fun experience. Like, I think it was a core memory for him. So yeah, it was cool.
We did that because we homeschool. So we did the book and watched the movie. And then her 11th birthday is coming up this year. So we're going there. for her 11th birthday, and I'm so excited.
Love
I'm so
that.
geeking out just myself. So
That's so cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be a lot of fun. So, do you know your love language, and do you try to incorporate that in your writing?
I think I think God, that's a really good question. You have really great questions.
Thank
And
you.
I actually never thought about giving my character like their love language as a character development piece, and I am going to because I think that's brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but yeah, that's really great. So my love language, my natural giving love language, like what I do naturally is I'm a total gift giver and I'm a total like acts of service person. And that's typically how I show love, but how I receive love is typically more of an acts of service as well. Like it's the same, which is it's like terrible because my husband is more of a quality time physical touch person. So we're totally not compatible that way. He's probably gonna watch this later and be like, she's so right. But no, that's a really good idea. I have not had a love language for my characters, but I'm going to now.
Yeah, I love that. I love like trying to figure him out when I'm in there, and I feel like Hudson is acts of service, like
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like he totally is, and
Hmm.
she's words. I feel like she's more words of affirmation for her.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that totally.
So I have just a couple more questions. Do you Can you share something with us that is a fact about you that's like unique or quirky that we maybe don't know about you, or a hobby that you like that you'd be like,
I can solve a Rubik's Cube in like 3 minutes.
I can't.
Yeah, I think that's pretty quirky.
Yeah,
And what else is a trait or quality about me? I don't know. I don't know. I think that's that.
that's a good one. I don't think a
Yeah,
lot of
the
people
Rubik's
can do
cube.
that.
That's the coolest trait I have. I think. I don't know. The most impressive trait.
You're a very good writer. That's the most impressive trait. So I always like to ask, because it's the holiday season, do you have like a specific tradition or something that you really like to do around this time of year?
So usually after Thanksgiving, because my husband is like anti-Christmas until after Thanksgiving, and we usually spend the 4-day weekend and we get our tree. We buy a new ornament every year and put it on the tree, and the ornament is related to something that you like that year, or something that you've like, maybe a new hobby you've taken up, or just something you like, or whatever. And so my boys always go pick one out, and my husband and I pick one out that kind of relate to something that occurred this year for us or something that we liked. And so I like that tradition that we do. And we never travel in December. We try not to travel in December because we did one year. We went on a cruise for like 10 days and it totally took away from Christmas we like lost the whole month of December. And so yeah, we never try to travel during the holiday season just so we can kind of live up the holidays. And when we just do the typical like Christmas Eve, we open one present on Christmas Eve and then we have a Christmas Day. And I always cook, and because I love cooking, and then I typically invite, like, just open up my house to any and all of our friends that want to come over in the evening time. And we do like trivia and games, and we do a white elephant party. So that's usually our traditional thing.
Sounds like so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after you finish a book, do you do anything to like unwind and like de-stress and just before you jump into the next one?
No, no, I constantly think about the next one and I just want to get to the next one. Like I'm just like, all right, let's go. Or chop chop, let's go. Like I
Do you
don't
keep it in your head, or do you write it down?
No, I do. So I have like my little notes, app and stuff, and I have my little post like on my desktop and stuff.
Mhm.
And I always have my ideas and I put my little scenes or whatever. But I don't know how to unwind. I typically like forget how to do that. And so I always just kind of like start thinking and plotting the next like, scene. And I think the opening of a book is so important in like capturing your reader. And so I feel like I spend a lot of time like, okay, how am I going to introduce this new character? And like what's going to be the hook? And so I start kind of thinking on that, and I just get overly obsessed, and it's a terrible trait probably because I don't unwind. Yeah.
Yeah, the unwind not unwinding part is, but I don't think so. If you're always like passionate and creative, and that's, your process. So
Yeah.
So we already talked about your plans for future books. So that book will be coming out sometime spring, and then you're going to do that novella for us next year. So we'll look forward to that. I'm excited to read that. Fireman, love that. So my last question for you is, what message do you want readers to take away after reading your book or book?
Gosh, I think I don't know if I ever have like an intention of like a message, because I think everyone interprets words and quotes and things differently. But if there were a desire for me, I would just want them to feel good about the book, be able to relate to the characters, and maybe have, some of the scenarios make them feel stronger or improve something about themselves. I like to see, like with Ember, like to see her grow and to see her, maintain her individuality, and determination, but be empowered by a man, I feel like is a hard balance to achieve, where she doesn't feel like, because I think again, like with women, a lot of women tend to lose their self when they start dating someone, because they start identifying almost like, oh, what they like, I like. And I think it's easy for them to adapt into that. And that's one thing that I don't ever want like the character to do, um, in the sense that I want them to remain strong and independent, but not so aggressively pushed off. So yeah, I think just taking away like being able to like maintain your own individuality as a person, but allowing these other relationships in your life to enhance your life, not to define them. Yeah. Yeah, and just to have a great damn time reading a great smutty book.
Yes, definitely. And you definitely, like, I can't give away stuff, but book 2, there's a very good scene in that book. You have to read it. And then now I want to go back and read book 1 because of what you set up in book 2. I'm like, I need to go over there and hear about them. So I'm very excited to read the first one. I'm doing it backwards, but hey, it's a standalone kind of interconnected, so it's okay. So definitely you can find both of her books on Kindle Unlimited and on Amazon. I highly recommend reading them. They are great. And I will link her information below so that you can follow her and join her newsletter so you can get all the details that are going to be coming out about Seamus's book in the near future, which is really exciting. I'm very excited to read that book. So if you have a book friend who you think will enjoy reading her content, please share this video and be sure to like and subscribe and follow her on Instagram. And when you do read the book, definitely put out a review because that always helps indie authors and gets more of us book girlies access to their amazing novels like these 2 books. So thank you so much for joining me today. It was such an honor chatting with you, and I'm really grateful for you being on the show.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you inviting me. I'm thrilled and honored. So thank you.
Thank you. And so please join me next time where we get another look behind the book.